Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. How are you,
Good
ladies?
morning.
Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Today is Mindful Leadership Monday, Episode 3, Empowering Your Team During Uncertain Times. This is a Project Positive Planet webinar brought to you by Well World TV, We Consulting, and Papilia. Joining me is Peggy Wine Borgman, creative coach of Cold Springs Creative, Rakhi Verma, managing director of Tigress Management, and Kim Diorsi, spa operations and marketing expert. Myself, Stephanie Rust, founder of Caribbean We and We Consulting, will be your host today. Hi, gorgeous ladies. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
So nice to have you in all your corners of the world.
I know it's been fun on different time zones, trying to coordinate and get everybody together. So it has been, I really enjoy it. And I thank the pandemic for bringing us to this time together.
Absolutely. And I know it's a holiday weekend. So if you weren't able to join live today, this is being recorded and we will have a replay on our YouTube channel, Well World TV. There is a poll because we want to check in with everyone this morning. So if you want to hop over there, are you struggling with being empowered? So just let us know how you're feeling today. So I would love to hear a little bit more about you ladies. Rakhi, would you like to talk a little bit about your background? Are you on mute, Rakhi? Because we can't hear you. Just check your microphone. No? Okay. We'll jump to Peggy and maybe you want to hop out and hop back in and we'll see if that gets fixed. Peggy?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Great. I was an active part of the spa industry for about 30 years as a spa owner and as a consultant. I did management training courses as well. And when I sold my company in 2014, I turned full-time to creative services, which had always been my first love. I'm an artist and writer, lifelong. And I have become a creative coach, primarily a book coach. And I help people write their books, mostly business people, though I have a number of, not that they're not business people, transformational authors who are writing personal growth and self-improvement nonfiction books. And I also work with Swell Public Relations, facilitating their strategic vision sessions or our strategic storytelling sessions as a visual facilitator, which is a lot of fun.
Lovely. And Rakhi, can we hear you now?
I hope so.
Yay!
There's that beautiful English accent. Okay.
Oh, thank you. I guess I would describe myself as a management consultant. So I advise businesses on growth primarily, but I focus on working specifically with leadership teams and board teams to help them create high-performing and happy workforces.
Lovely. I think we all need that right now.
Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm.
And Miss Kimberly?
Hi, I've been in the spa industry for about 30 years now in operations, development, building and designing high-end resort spas, day spas, and country club spas. In the past 5 years, I've kind of switched to doing a lot of marketing and TV segments, wellness TV segments. And just got nominated to the board for Florida Spa Association for their Wellness Advisory Board. And been a global wellness ambassador for Global Wellness Day since 2014. And just recently finished school at FAU for project management.
Lovely. Yeah.
So Stephanie, tell us a little bit about your background and how we got here and everything that you did to develop these series that you've been working on.
Well, thank you for asking. So much like yourself, I started in spa operations management, then moved to the development side. So I work as a consultant, developing spa concepts around the world. And additionally, when I was living in the Caribbean, revamping a spa there in Turks and Caicos, saw a need for more education and connection within the 32 countries in the Caribbean. So we began holding educational events, and online courses has now developed through this current situation that we are in. So, and I was actually looking at a memory. We do something on Friday, if you all know Kim Collier, called Planet-Based Healing. And she used to have a beautiful line called Jammu. So about a decade ago, when I was in Turks and Caicos, we were live streaming with her from Turks and Caicos to Montana doing virtual training. So I'm like, this is all very serendipitous, because I completely forgot that we were innovators of that already in the Caribbean. So I think we're all moving to this online world right now.
Yes, and the reason why we chose this topic is everybody I talk to, all the colleagues in our business, they're struggling right now. They are, they don't have any answers. They're not being given answers right now. So we wanted to have a conversation, a real conversation of how we can help each other, how we can support each other, and ideas to lead our teams right now to be successful. Because right now we're empowering them, but we're empowering them remotely. We're so used to being together and having meetings that are one-on-one or a team meeting or a daily lineup. And now we're doing it from home and we're not seeing each other. So we wanted to open up and have a conversation on that.
I think it's great. It's such an important topic. It was prevalent before the pandemic, but it's more prevalent after, I think, as we're all navigating new times and some of us new journeys, or most of us new journeys. So our first question, we'll jump right in. How would you describe a mindful leader, and can you give an example of someone that has influenced you to be a mindful leader? Peggy, do you want to start?
Sure. I think mindful leadership starts with, well, mindfulness, right? Being truly self-aware. And unfortunately, that's not something that has always been a priority in leadership training is self-awareness. I shouldn't say leadership training, but leadership, traditional leadership values. We were just talking before we went live about the fact that there's so many female leaders in the world who have emerged as real leaders during this crisis. And I think that goes back to this probably more socialized tendency to be self-aware and to be aware of your impact on other people and to not play the role of, the all-seeing, all-knowing answer man type leader, which is what a lot of people crave during a crisis. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that we have to be really aware of, is to not necessarily feed into that need for the big, strong leader who knows everything and, all the little chickens get in line behind this person. That command and control thing, we're seeing it now, with our teams being dispersed, people everywhere, that you're really having to share leadership a lot more than in the past, despite the fact that everyone wants that, to hold on to that teddy bear and cling to it and feel comfortable and safe.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a place for being reassuring, because everybody needs that. The buck stops with you as the leader. You do need to reassure people when they're worried. But I completely agree with you. If you are not a mindful human, you're not going to discover mindful leadership in the midst of a crisis. If you haven't done the work, you haven't invested in, and this is everything from your health to your self-development to learning how to be reflective, being honest about your weaknesses. If you haven't done that work before, it's not going to just come to you in some light bulb moment in a crisis. So this is a muscle that needed to have been trained and flexed. I don't think it means you can't start working on it now. And maybe we'll get into some of those ideas and tips later on in the conversation. But yeah, it starts with you. And a lot of leaders just don't understand that.
That's a good point.
I think,
and for me,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. For me, mindfulness leader is someone that is not always worried about the bottom line and the money, but about your employees' mental and emotional health and their well-being and checking on them. And what I'm hearing right now is kind of like 50-50. A lot of people are being checked on by their employers and their colleagues, but some are being left to dry and they haven't even received a phone call, a text. And so that is what really has struck me to the core of how is that a company that you want to work for? And so I think that's where we're at right now. And it's a scary time.
And I think you'll find that when the economy recovers, as it always does, we've been through economic crises before, and we will get there. You know, we'll be happy and all in work again one day. The talent is going to start moving to the businesses that did really well in handling people. And it's not just employees, it's other stakeholders, it's suppliers, it's clients, you know, everyone in your ecosystem, just purely from a business perspective. It makes good sense to check in with everybody now.
I agree 100%. We've been talking about that quite a bit on our Travel Tuesday calls, that how you're acting and responding to people during this pandemic is going to definitely dictate your future business. And consumers are going to be aware of that and want to know that prior to returning to you. So was there someone in your life that was impactful as a mindful leader and kind of showed you that skill set, or maybe came to you? Because I remember as an early person in my career, I was 19 in my first management role, which is probably far too young. And it was in spa, and spa people are very tough. And I definitely had a learning lesson from my staff coming to me and saying, you know, I gravitate towards this and I need you to do this for me. And it was definitely a lot of learning lessons for me. How about you, Peggy? Was there someone that?
Yes, well, there were a lot of someones. You bring up a really good point. The best trainers of leaders are the people who are being led by them, because if they are willing and able to give feedback, that's the most important school. I think just as a role model and someone who's really thought a great deal about leadership, who is also from the hospitality industry, Chip Conley comes to mind. I had the opportunity to work with him on a spa project in the Bay Area and have known him for many years.
He has an excellent book, by the way.
Yes, Wisdom at Work, the new.
Yeah.
So he's written several books, including one that, you know, about how Maslow's hierarchy, you know, applying that in the workplace. But his new one, Wisdom at Work, was based on his experiences as an advisor to Airbnb and kind of being the old guy in the company. And he now has an organization called the Modern Elder Academy in Baja California, where you can actually go, those of us of a certain age, can go and actually reinvent ourselves. But he probably, in terms of a high-profile example of leadership, he just springs to mind every time. He's such a brilliant person, but has such a big, big heart.
Great. How about you, Ricky?
So I'm going to answer this slightly controversially, because I've learned, I hope, to be a good leader by doing the opposite of everyone that ever led me. That was terrible.
I can empathize with that as well.
And it was just, you know how you feel when you're being led by someone who really doesn't care or really doesn't know what they're doing. And yeah, it's just kind of, it makes it easier just to flip it on its head and go, well, this is the behavior I would have liked to have seen. But I've always been someone who's read a lot of books on emotional intelligence, and I've had a lot of coaching and had to have a look at the bits of myself that are not so great and be just kind of honest about it, I think. So for me, it's, I wouldn't instantly be able to go to names of people that I thought were great leaders, because I've maybe been a bit unlucky on that front. But just not following in their footsteps, I think.
That's an excellent point. I think everybody that's had a seasoned career has had a leader like that, at least one. Kim, what are your experience?
I was like, this morning I was thinking too, and when I was going over the questions, and I'm like, this one's going to be probably one of the hardest ones. And I'm like, is that okay? Is that good? Is that bad? But I guess it makes me who I am today. But Ann Emick Patton has been instrumental to me. And I'll never forget, she used to always say, slow and steady, slow and steady. Because with my personality, I want like quick, instant. But I learned through her, sometimes it's not instant. Sometimes you have to step back. And sometimes it's okay not to know all the answers. And what about you, Stephanie?
I would agree with each of you. I've had some phenomenal people through the International Spa Association, and now working so much in the Caribbean with Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. So not even direct leaders, but I think if you have a challenging direct report, that you should be reaching out to people within your industry and finding those mentors, because successful people love to help others grow, particularly in hospitality and spa, where we struggle daily with finding great leaders and people to work in our industry. So I would say there's a lot of resources out there. Those people have been essential for me. I've learned a lot from the not so great leaders. And then additionally, my team has always just been such a great resource and learning tool. And each opportunity I always saw as a learning tool, like, hey, I would rate myself. How did I handle this? Or how is this team member doing? And I would constantly check in with them to see what they needed for me to be a better leader. And I think, no one on your team is the same, and everybody else requires something different. So going about it from that aspect and really listening has probably been the best thing I've learned along the way.
Yeah, and like what you say, everybody's different. I used to say to my staff, everybody's brain works differently, and please don't judge them for the way they feel, the way they think. You have to understand them and where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we used to start our employee training with a social style assessment, so people knew going in where they were coming from, and then they could also interact with other people more effectively, because we always come at communication from our own filters, our own social style, and unlocking that for people, it was just a gigantic aha, to the point where we realized this is where we just have to start. This is just point A of helping people understand one another. Leaders are different. We're wired differently. We can be scary to people because we're more assertive. We tend to be louder, more expressive, and the people who are attracted to careers in the spa industry, by and large, are a different social style than the people who are leading the spa industry. And that's true in a lot of industries. But once you realize kind of those inherent differences, and you can figure out how to bridge those to flex to other people's social styles, so you aren't as, I was a monster when I was a young leader of a company.
Me too.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah. I would not want to work for 23-year-old me to save my life. But, over time, hopefully, some of us learn, and one of the things I learned is, I'm coming from this different place, and I have to meet people halfway.
Yeah, I think when you're a young leader too, you're coming from an I place because you're trying to prove yourself. Yes. And you're not listening, you're not empathetic, and you're like, hey, just get on board, do what you're supposed to do. Yeah. Like, these are numbers.
Hard about this.
Show up clean. Like, how hard is this? Like, you don't have a lot of empathy at that point. So yeah, and then even like culturally, when I was in Turks and Caicos, I had 15 different cultures from around the world, and how they all worked together and what they needed, and their communication styles were all completely different. So every day was a new personality challenge. Okay, so great thoughts on that question, ladies. So during this time, how have you used it to stretch yourself, your business strategy, your family, or those you lead? Have you used this time in a certain way?
Well, it's definitely changed. Obviously it's changed everything that we do, but it the old crisis opportunity dichotomy, it has forced us to be resourceful. I started a virtual writing group as a result of this, because I thought, hey, people have time. It was sort of the beginning stages when we were in that, if you could call it a honeymoon period, of just sort of like, wow, what are we going to do with this time that we suddenly have on our hands? And, people are much, much busier now. I find as things, we figured out how to work, we figured out how to make progress, or we're having to figure out how to get businesses reopened. But so realizing that building virtual communities was really going to be essential going forward. And I think that's something that, regardless of what the outcome of this is, we are going to understand that we have to have better ties both live and in the real world, but also, building what we're doing right now. I mean, this is a great example of it, is, creating ties to people around the world and building new networks that I think will help us all.
Absolutely. Ricky?
So I was one of the unfortunate people whose work went completely out the window during the lockdown. So no clients all of a sudden, which I allowed myself to be terrified for a few days, and then I just had to get over it. So, and actually it's been really pleasant. I've been doing yoga every day. I was doing a distance learning course, a writing course. So I've been focusing on that. I've been, developing my hobbies, reading a lot. One of the things I did do to help me feel less hopeless and helpless about the whole thing was to offer free coaching to anybody that needs it during the lockdown. So any business that is struggling or in a place of fear, which many are, I've been talking to those companies and just giving them free coaching to help them get through. And I think if anyone isn't doing something in that way, that is a great way to just get yourself out of this place of fear. And, at worst, you're building some relationships for the future, so, but it's a great way of just deflecting from your own anxiety and just focusing on helping other people.
Now, Rocky, are you doing a small business podcast?
I am doing it's in the very early stages of development. How did you know about this? This is incredible. I don't think we do. I'm literally
Kim Marshall mentioned that on the chat.
Yeah, I'm literally having my first planning meeting for it tomorrow, and I'm going to be interviewing small businesses, which don't normally get much of a look in or much PR out in the internet world, and we're going to be doing a podcast interviewing different entrepreneurs and leaders of businesses that wouldn't otherwise normally get a platform. But we've got some really cool, like, millennial people. So it's not just old fuddy-duddies like me.
That's awesome. Oh my God, I love the pivot.
Well, you can all come and be guests, can't you? So that'll be
super fun. So for those people, states are reopening, countries are reopening. Do you guys have any tips for people, how people could show appreciation to those people coming back into the workplace, or if they're still sheltering in place? As a leader, how can we show some appreciation to people?
Well, I think it's incumbent on any leader right now to be grateful for what and appreciative of what their teams have been through. I mean, there are certainly a lot of managers who are still receiving a paycheck while the line employees have been, on an unemployment or not, as the case may be. There's a lot of people still waiting for that. So, kind of going back to, the importance of empathy. I think empathy is the best way to show gratitude to somebody, is to really, as hard as it may be in the midst of all the furor of getting reopened, is to take time to listen to people, to really hear them, because they are going to be coming from a lot of different, pretty freaked out places. And, as much as we need to move forward and get things done, we also have to allow that space to hear people's stories. And that's going to be hard for a lot of managers who want to just get in there, let's get things open, let's deal with this, let's write new protocols. Part of the job is just going to be listening to people. And that's hard.
Excellent point, Peggy. Very good.
And I imagine some people are going to be suffering with PTSD coming out of this. There's never been a time in our lives where we've stayed home for 3 consecutive months, and seen these kind of challenges.
Yeah, I think to just add to what Peggy's just said, we've been told by all our governments, this is a fearful time. You need to stay at home. You need to, just keep yourselves alive, if you like. And it's been this message of, we've been terrified, a lot of us. So to then come back into the workplace and the leader is panicking because no money's been made for a few months, and to expect people to just, hit the ground running is not going to happen. And this isn't going to be easy, but every single person that works for you needs to be communicated with individually to understand what has happened to them in the last few months. They could have lost people they love. They could have lost children. This is serious stuff. So, I'm sad to say not every leader is going to make it. Not every leader is going to be able to do this, but this is what it takes now.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to meet people where they are. So like Kim said, everybody operates at a different pace. Some people will come in and they'll throw themselves into work to distract themselves from what's happened, and that's great. And other people will be completely immobilized by it. And you now have to show all facets of your leadership and be able to deal with that. That's going to be tough for some people.
And now what we're going to see is a shift that right now we need to take better care of our employees and the guests, because guests always came first. But right now, to get to those guests, we need to get to our frontline employees, wrap our arms around them, and make sure they're okay. And that's a big shift that we're going to be seeing.
Yeah, I mean, especially in your industry, the people that are working in your hotel or resort need to make your customers feel comfortable. So if there's still, if there's still fear around them, then it's just going to create this, well, not a very spa-like energy, but this applies to all businesses, really. If the staff aren't happy, the customers are not going to come.
Absolutely.
And the owner of my yoga studio, last week, she invited 6 people home to do yoga. It was the first time. We've been doing it all Zoom. We get to her house and she's still in the garage. She hasn't stepped foot outside of the garage because she's still nervous. 3 minutes prior, she was talking to her husband that she was going to cancel the class. Now, this is the owner. And she has suffering from anxiety. And so we're all there to support her. So we also have to support those leaders. And we might see a shift in that right now, that we might be, the employees might be taking care of the leaders as well.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Are there any tools that you could recommend to some of these leaders that may be struggling and that they could pass down to their teams?
Well, fortunately, the industry that we're in is all about well-being and stress relief. So I think we really have to practice what we preach right now. And that's been one of the biggest disconnects that I've seen during this crisis, is that the wellness industry, along with every other industry, has been taken down and is experiencing all the trauma and drama that these other industries have. We've got a toolkit that we need to actually put into practice. So I think that, really walking the talk, this is a moment where we could be totally hypocritical leaders, or we could really lead by example. And I think we're going to have to pull out every trick in our bag of wellness tricks to make sure that we can keep our team and ourselves on the even keel. If we can't relieve our own stress, we're not going to be able to be effective with our teams.
And I think you have to be honest with your team. You have to be upfront, and it's okay not to know all the answers. And that's what we're all facing right now, because we're all, as a leader, you want to be in control. You want to have the answers. You do your best to make sure you have the answers. But right now, our leaders don't have the answers. So we need to make sure that we take a step back and we're just authentic with the teams.
That's the perfect word, is authenticity, because you are still going to be suffering. You are still going to be stressed. Being able to let people know how you suffer and deal with it and continue on is one of the most important lessons of emotional intelligence and emotional equilibrium. Is be real, but you're going to have to figure out how to get through it too.
And as women leaders, it's always been hard to be a working mom, but to be a working mom during a pandemic with the children don't have childcare is a whole level of gratitude that we're that we're all going to be developing together and finding those answers together with that.
Yeah, I would say if I were working with clients on putting that toolkit in place, this now has to be done in collaboration with your staff. You need to ask them what they need to make them feel happy. I mean, you should have been asking them this all along. This shouldn't just happen in a pandemic, but well, you know, we'll let that go. But now is the time to say, what do you need to feel happy? So if some people feel more comfortable working from home, then I know in some industries that's not, maybe in the spa industry that isn't necessarily going to work, but with all the other industries that I work with, you know, there are flexible options for people, and you do, yeah. I mean, if anything is needed now is a big bucket of trust between you and your staff. You know, they are working when they're at home, they're doing their best, you know, and just continue in that vein. Everything's changed now. So
and my family and I, we realized that it doesn't work best when I work at home, and they're ready for me to go. So I told them I was going to go internationally.
Yeah.
But I think to mirror what you said, Rakeeb, trust is going to be the new currency between clients, between staff, and authenticity and trust, and they're going to go hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, it always should have been, but I think people don't have a choice now. So I know when the lockdown happened in the UK, there were still lots of employers that were very reluctant to let people work from home until they heard the words come out the Prime Minister's mouth. People were still having to go to work. And, you know, we just need to get rid of that now. That needs to go. It's very old fashioned. You know, it's time to stop that.
Now we just heard here that Facebook is not going to have their employees come back to, I mean, most of their employees come back to, you know, a physical office. And lots of companies are realizing, hey, this is actually a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, all that expensive real estate.
Well, that's going to be shifting, I think, and also business travel is another thing that's going to be shifting hugely. People are figuring out, hey, you can accomplish just as much as online, and we can have these meetings, and we're not traveling and spending money, and
losing days to travel, you know, where your productivity drops.
Yeah. And the impact on the environment. I mean, when I worked for big corporates, you know, you'd have senior people flying to Brazil from London for an hour's meeting and then back again. I mean, that is not necessary.
Wow.
That's not necessary.
Yeah.
I had my financial planner call me last night, like at 9 o'clock, just to check on me and touch base, which I thought was very nice. And we were talking about the working from home. And he said he's actually struggling because that's how he develops his relationships with his clients, is those one-on-one meetings. Yeah. So I hope we all don't rush to say, hey, we have to work from home now, because a lot of stuff is developed face-to-face. A lot of stuff is, some of the best memories I have and the most working relations I have are at our spa events, are at the conferences, are at the educational events. So we're just going to have to find a new way to get there to make sure it's safe. But those face-to-face are so important. I know they're important for me.
Yeah, I think too, when we do travel, it's going to be much more appreciated. So if you are, you know, maybe last year I was going to, I don't want to say because it's obnoxious, but maybe 20 conferences, you know, 50 trips a year, maybe more. But you know, next year maybe it'll be like 3 and 10 trips, or into this year, hopefully. So I think that it'll be more impactful when we do get there.
I agree.
I think it will also exert a little more pressure on meeting organizers, conference planners, to make sure that they're putting on, you know, fantastic events. Because I think, you know, you can often feel like, oh, you know, same event, different year. I think everyone's going to be under a good sort of pressure to improve the quality of whatever it is that they are producing.
I think so. And it won't be about quantity. It'll be about quality. as
Yeah,
we
you
move
can't
forward.
take the face-to-face contact is crucial. It's really important for building relationships. But as you say, maybe we'll think a bit more about how well we spend that time with each other face to face.
So what does the modern leader look like? Are we going to see a shift in the future?
Definitely.
What do you think?
I definitely.
I know we all.
I mean, we're seeing this. We were just talking about the fact that, female leaders have, emerged as the most effective leaders in crisis. And we also know from years of study that women who lead companies, lead more profitable companies, have more satisfied employees. So I'm hoping that we are going to realize that the more collaborative culture that's typically that's typical of female leadership is going to become more common, and not just like, oh, here's this interesting nugget of information, but it's like, wow, how are we going to make this happen in our company? I'm really hopeful that, the fact that there's so few women still in C-suites is just boggles the mind. There's not enough women in leadership roles in politics. That's changing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's an opportunity for, and I hope it's one that we step into and take to enable women to become, to have those seats at the table that we need in order to literally change the world.
Yeah, if you look at Jacinda Ardern, who I know we were talking about just before we went live, what a great example to everybody. And when we emerge from this crisis and we see, as we are seeing now, how well the female leaders have handled this crisis and looked after people in their countries, then there is no more arguing now that women make great leaders. I saw her she was doing a news item earlier and there was an earthquake while she was talking, and she was just, oh, there's a little bit of an earthquake happening. So no more of this women get too emotional stuff. That conversation is over now. So yeah, I think it's going to be really, really positive. I think how a leader's going to change, I don't think we'll see change immediately, but as I say, when the economy starts functioning in a more normal way and the talent starts moving around, I think people are going to go and look for companies where there are more women on boards and who've really proved themselves in this crisis. I hope so, anyway.
Yeah, and as a mother of sons, I want to make sure I am raising them right and teaching them about empathy and empowering women and making sure that they're living the best lives, but also productive and powerful. Make sure we're raising men right and boys right.
Mm-hmm.
And just from like a global level, it's interesting. Colombia has started to make everything transparent. So any government contracts can be looked up, people bidding on them. You can see the efficacy, and they've made a commitment to be transparent and ethical. So, and like New Zealand and these other countries, I think and I'll give you this, Caribbean, like 80% of the Caribbean is women leaders.
I did not know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Whether it's hospitality, whether it's prime ministers, whether it's premiers, they've had this trajectory for a long time. So, so I think as we start to see these outlying countries and people get more notoriety for the things that they're doing, shifting, like Scandinavia is really good at it, shifting to measuring their success on wellness and mindfulness and how people are doing, that hopefully the larger nations will follow suit.
It's going to be really interesting to see what that UN happiness index looks like after this, and how it shifts, because we know who's sort of been at the top of the leaderboard and in that index, and boy, I can't imagine what, for example, the United, where were we, like 27 or something pathetic. We're going to drop even further, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think the UK will be quite close. Quite close.
Yeah.
And that's frightful.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
So how can leaders, how could they think globally but act locally? So we talk about these big ideas and change. How can they think globally and act locally?
I think the best thing to do is start small within your own department and work on that, and then that'll grow. If you start too big, then there's too many problems, but start small and then grow from there.
I mean, each relationship that we have is an opportunity to create this ripple effect of influence. And particularly when you're an employer, when you're a leader, when you're a manager, man, you have a lot of influence over how, I mean, think of how much time people spend at work versus in their personal lives. You have a responsibility, really, to literally embody the kind of change that, you want to see. And then that ripple, it's not going to affect every single one of your employees, but there are going to be people that are going to take that, then take it home, take it to their kids, take it to wherever wherever they work next. I think one of the most gratifying things for me as a leader, and this still happens periodically, where I'll get a random email or a phone call from somebody who says, you have no idea the impact that you had on me. And it's an event that I don't remember. Usually it's something, often it's, I fired them.
But I have to say yes. But you've taught them. You cared enough. You cared enough about them.
Mm-hmm. And it probably moved them into something else, and then hopefully they took that lesson and transformed it.
I've seen, seeds of things that I know that, came from our company being planted, and it's fine with me because really leadership was my practice. It was sort of my crucible. So, I see it. This person who used to work for me takes some of that and plants it over here, and now it's flowering over here in a different place. And that's very gratifying to me. It's totally changed how I feel about what my purpose was in those roles. And now I realize it's this kind of seed planting.
So I didn't really understand the question.
Okay.
Do we mean globally in terms of more strategically about your business, or are we thinking globally as in globally?
So
or is it up to us to interpret the question?
Kim wrote that question. Kim, do you want to clarify?
Okay. Oh, sure. Like we're in this big world, and we see so many things that are going on, and then we want to think, oh, I want to save the planet today, but you can't save the planet unless you save your little team.
Yeah.
So any suggestions for that?
So, I mean, I do this work quite a lot with my clients when we're thinking about their corporate strategy. And there is a place to think big and be aspirational and have a vision for where you fit into the big wide world. But I think you're right. You have to then have a plan that is quite specific to what you can physically control and do in the time that, you're hoping to achieve this big global success. So you can have a strategy that could be 3 to 5 years further down the line, but your plan needs to be for the next 12 months probably. And again, I think if you are not engaging your staff at all levels within the organization, so not just the management teams, forget it, it's not going to happen.
Absolutely.
So you did great on the question. Great job, Rocky.
So I want to talk a little bit about workplace culture as we wind down the call. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to pop those in the chat. But how can we, everybody talks a lot about toxic culture in the workplace. This has been a great time to reset, come back in. If you had those problems before, what are some tips that you all might have to create culture within the workplace?
Well, your workplace culture is almost like a biome. It kind of forms itself as well as you mindfully shaping it, maybe, but it kind of has its own innate qualities. And this is more true for, maybe companies that have been around for a while. Understanding where you're at right now is really important, kind of where you're starting from and maybe what your shortcomings are. But I would say, and it's sort of like, the forming of a mission or a vision or any of those things, that's a collaborative effort. And it's also a discovery effort. So I think that workplace culture is first step is discovery. Is like, what really is our culture? I know what I think it is as a leader, because I held ideas that were not really true as a leader all the time. This is what I think I'm doing, I think we're all about, but the actual lived experience of my team is something kind of different. So discovery, and then, okay, where are the gaps? What do we want to change? And then, how do we get there? But it's a questioning process. It's not a tell and sell kind of process. Culture isn't something that you just like go, whoop, here's culture, take it or leave it. Culture is really the lived experience every day of your team. So the first thing is finding out what they think it is. And there's all kinds of great, I'm sure Keith probably has some awesome tools for doing this discovery process and then figuring out where to go from there, how to make the changes that you need to make.
Yeah, I think one of the things that could happen, and this is a warning really, is that toxic leaders are going to potentially become much more toxic going back into the workplace because their employees are afraid of losing their jobs. So if you've been for a few months worried about whether your job is still there when you get back to work, this could be a time where a toxic leader could really take advantage of your vulnerability. So if you can do anything in this time, it's find your voice. Find your voice, because there are going to be some leaders who are going to be fantastic when they get back to work and they're really going to have had an epiphany in this time. But the bad guys are going to maybe be worse. So I think it's time for everyone to develop a backbone and some courage and maybe speak up a bit, because that's my concern is people are going back very fearful for their jobs and they're going to allow toxic culture to. But yeah, there are lots of different ways in which you can establish what your culture is, as Peggy just mentioned. And also your culture changes as your business changes. So a small, 5-person company culture is going to be very different to 200 people. And I've worked with lots of businesses where they started off with 3 of them in a room and they're now trying to, keep the same culture for 70 people and they're not buying it. They're not having it. So, you got to let go as well.
What I recommend is when everybody gets back to the workplace is redefine the mission statement, because and sit down together and write it together. When I did an opening, one of the best things we did is we wrote the mission statement together and everyone played a role in it. So what our mission statement was yesterday is totally different today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A really good point. And the core values, of the company as well. That's going to be a big shift because I think community well-being has suddenly become a much bigger deal for, for all of us. And, most companies' core values don't necessarily, the spa industry, yes, you see that, but in other industries, much less so.
And then also ask your vendors and the people what you're working with, what are their new mission statements? What are their core values? And is that some relationship that you want to keep, or do you want to look for something new to work with to make your you successful and your team successful?
I like that idea. And I think make it public too. I have a follow-up question. If you're a segment and you have a hierarchy and leadership, what if we're struggling with some of your direct reports and management team prior? How do you go back into that situation, and what recommendations would you have for someone to navigate that?
I do think everything has to be sort of rechecked and reset. Again, sort of a discovery process. Where are we at? Okay, we've got some team members that, well, let's see where they're at now. Who knows? Maybe your problem people have suddenly, realized that this job really matters to them and they're going to, step up their game. But it goes back to taking the time with each person, talking to them about what their needs, their goals are, beyond just keeping employed, keeping my job.
But what if it's your leader? What if it's
a higher leader? I think you need to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation of, hey, Susie, or hey, John, I need to be successful, and this is what I need from you to be successful. You have to be honest and open and have a one-on-one meeting. So you're both successful.
Yeah, and the good leaders will be facilitating those conversations. One of the things that we haven't mentioned on this webinar, which I think is really important, is constantly asking for feedback. I hate hearing feedback about myself, even if it's good feedback. It just makes me, and sometimes people say things to me about me which are not very nice, and you have to take it on the chin. Even if you don't believe it, you have to go away and just absorb it, because there might be some truth in it. And those people who can take it on the chin, feel really uncomfortable, will do something about it and come back and be better leaders.
Yeah, perception is reality.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And in that feedback process, actually, you can sometimes iron out what the issue is between you, and just, you know, because we can all come across in a way that we weren't intending to sometimes. So, but this is about having those courageous conversations, and it's a really tough thing to do, because I have been such a coward but the moment you start doing it, the floodgates open, and then don't
it
become
gets
like
a lot
me
easier.
and save yourselves. It's brutally honest at times.
It does get easier with time. And also, I think one of the important things to do is to have a schedule of regular communication. You know, a lot of people on the operations floor, it's catch as catch can. Oh, when I have time, I'm going to do this. And you end up, oh, maybe I ended up talking to these 3 people, but these 6 people got neglected. You've got to put it into your operational tempo. It's like, you know, one of the big rocks that goes in the jar first is scheduling one-on-ones with people, even if it's just, you know, a 15-minute check-in. The thing that I heard over and over again in job interviews from people when I would ask them, you know, what did you like most about your last job or your last supervisor? Almost invariably, I knew where I stood, is what people would tell me. And you would think, you know, we think people don't want to know that. We don't think employees want to know that. They do. So if we're not meeting that need, we're really depriving them of a sense of security. Even if it's uncertainty, right? You don't know. It's worse than the bad knowing.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, too, I think, you know, we do a really great job in the spa world or hotel hospitality, taking people on a journey, explaining where everything is. And there was this quirky guy I used to interview for iSpot's speaker task force that spoke on employee and retaining staff. And he ran all of these car dealerships. I don't know how he got into the spa world. I can't think of his name right now. But he wrote these little books. But one thing he's explained is, you know, people feel comfortable when they know what's going to happen. You need to show the first day where the bathroom is, what time lunch is, what time your breaks are. You have to like be very specific and outline things for people on what your expectations are to make them comfortable. But yeah, I think communication can solve everything. And Brene Brown writes some great books on vulnerability, and, you know, people aren't thinking about how you're receiving something. They're thinking just about how they're putting it out there.
Yeah.
True.
And if you want to be in a leadership position, you want to have a director, fancy job title, and a nice salary. There's a lot of responsibility that goes with that. If you don't make the time, as Peggy said, to speak to everybody that works for you, within reason, depending on the size of the company, but at least to the people that report into you, well, you're not doing a job properly, you know. So you can drive the nice Lexus and live in a big house, but your responsibility as a leader is to make sure that the people that are working for you are happy and productive. I just wanted to flag something up quickly. I know we're going to be running out of time, but if you haven't read this book, I hope it doesn't come out back to front. Daniel Coleman, Emotional Intelligence.
Yes.
If you read no other book about business,
I agree.
Peggy's nodding, so I'm sure you've read
Yeah.
quite a few years. If you read nothing else, read that book.
Any other publications that you recommend? Or
another resource I'd recommend if you want to get a quick measurement of your team's morale is the Gallup 12 questions.
okay.
I used to just do a little survey monkey, you know, with my team every 6 months. and we do the Gallup 12. And the Gallup 12 questions have been statistically proven to correlate to higher company success and profitability too, but it's really about how your people feel. So that's a great tool. You can just Google that and find it online, and just use it consistently and watch what happens to those numbers and measurements.
Brilliant.
My best tool right now is the app. It's the Peloton app, and it's the meditation. And when my son is having a little breakdown, I go to 10-minute meditation or a 5-minute meditation, and I hand him the phone. But this can be used for your staff as well. They might be having a hard time, a hard day, and you can put this meditation on. You can do it together, or they can do it by themselves.
It's a great idea.
Find a good meditation app that's at your tools that you can use. But says Peggy, you can continue to be a great inspiration and role model for me. I'm planting your seeds here in Arizona. Thanks for doing these webinars. So thank you all. Isn't that sweet?
That's
Very
sweet.
And I did finally get our poll up. I forgot to publish it. So people are signing in, and the question was, are you struggling with being empowered? Personally, it doesn't seem that anybody is. And then 33% of people said yes for me and my team. And then 66% of people said not really, it's a good time for me. So it's shifting, but as people are jumping on, but so any final thoughts, ladies, on empowering leadership, how you felt, maybe personally, how you felt empowerment during this time?
I think trying to become more empowered is actually a long process, and it's not easy. So start with the small things that make you feel empowered. If it's something as simple as saying no to somebody that you're not able to say no to, start with the small stuff, and then your confidence builds and you feel like you're a bit more in control. Tackling all the big stuff straight away, I think, is going to be difficult, and you have to build up empowerment over well, for me, it's been a lifetime. I don't know about Peggy or Kim or you, Stephanie, but it takes a while to get there.
I would absolutely second everything that you just said. I think it's really important to also make sure that you spend sometime every day in a place doing an activity that you're really good at. Mm-hmm. So you can have that positive feedback loop that will help you expand that empowerment to other things. But whatever that little unique genius of yours is, make sure you spend some time with that every day, because that will really recharge your batteries. And it also reminds you of your competence, which is really important right now because we're not feeling competent.
Great idea.
I would echo what you all said, and I don't know about you personally, but I mean, it's something you have to consistently work on. I don't think we'll ever get to a point. I mean, I have quite a few years to live, but I'm like, when is that day going to happen where I just feel empowered all the time? But
you can get close to it
with life. What's that?
You can get close to it. I think as you get older and you just relax a bit about stuff, there are days when you can feel empowered for the whole day. So you know, it does. If you continue to, keep taking those steps, you'll get there.
Okay.
Those days are what chocolate is for.
Yeah.
Yes. And Stephanie, do you have the slides, Rocky, on how to get in touch?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, I popped it here in the chat. So everybody's info is here in the chat. So you can find these incredible ladies on LinkedIn, and then we also provided their emails. So any questions, just let us know. And I thank you all so much.
Thank you. This is fun.
Thank you for the conversation. It was a nice way to start.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
Wishing you all great holiday weekends. And Peggy, if you will push that stop live button, we will conclude today.
Okay. I think I see it's a red button that says end call.
That's the one. Take care, ladies.
Cheers.